2.5 yards is what I'm working with. I've already gone ahead to fold it into two and also folded it over again and left like 1.5 inch for the center front. There's going to be an allowance in the center front. I'm sorry, my camera wasn't really capturing what I was doing initially. What I'm doing is just to mark 1/2 inch at the top of the material, and then from the center line I came in by 3 inches and 3 inches for the neck width, and then marked my actual shoulder, which is 7.5. I'm just marking the 1/2 inch again to be clear there. Then I came down by 1 inch from the 1/2 inch I created, and then at the tip there I also came down by 1.5 inch. 1.5 inch from the 1/2 inch, not from the top. So what I am doing now is to connect the dots, the line from the 1/2 inch on the 3 inches on 3 inches of the neck width to the point where I came down by 1.5 inch at the round sleeve area. So for my round sleeve I'm making use of 7, and I came down by 1 inch for ease. And I'm also going to come in from where I marked my round sleeve. I'm going to come in by 4, and on that point I'm just going to go down like that. But before going down, to make sure everything aligns properly, I'm going to also go ahead to check the measurements I have so that everything rhymes. So what I have is 18 inches. That's after creating the curve. What I have is 18 inches, and I'm just going to be marking it down. I'm really sorry that my camera video quality is fluctuating. It's showing blue, it's clear at a point, and sometimes the color is changing. I really tried to fix this, but I didn't know why it wasn't working. But I just had to go ahead to shoot the video regardless, so please bear with me. So I'm not going to cut at the exact line I cut initially, so I'm just going to go up by 1/2 inch and cut it. That is at the top, because that 1/2 inch is going to serve as our joining allowance, which was the first thing I actually marked. I hope it's clear, guys. And please make sure to pin your fabric so that you don't have it moving around while everything is still in check and put together, is because I actually pinned down this material. Now for the neckline, for the back neck, I'm going to be coming down by 1 inch and connecting it to the 3 inches which we marked for neck width. I'm just going to go ahead to cut both the front and the back neck together like this. First guys, the back neckline is high, but for the front neck from the top nail we see it's a v-neck, and so I'm going to illustrate how to cut the v-neck if you actually want to make use of the v-neck. But for me, I'm not really going to be working with that v-neck because I don't want mine to be a v-neck. However, I'm still going to show you how to do that. So I came down by 7 inches, and then what you just do is to go ahead and cut the front neckline like so. You just cut it off like so if you want yours to be a v-neck. But for mine, I want mine to be a round neck, and a round neck is going to be a bit high, and so I had to extend the neck width from that 3 inches which I marked earlier to be 3.5 inches, and then I came down by 3.5 for the neck depth. That is what I want mine to be. So if you can decide to make yours a v-neck or have a keyhole, whichever one. So what I'm going to be doing now is to cut a facing for the front. If you do not want to make use of facing, you can make use of a cutting bias to just, after joining your neckline, you go ahead to fold, use the bias to turn it over. But I do not want to make use of a bias. I want to make use of a facing to turn it in. I feel it's neater that way. Just personal preference. But whatever you decide to do, it's fine, but I just prefer to use facing. Now for the inner belt, because you're going to see that the waist is actually a bit fitted, I'm going to be cutting 32 inches. You can make use of 30 or 25 depending on what you want. What I'm doing right now is to sew on the allowance that has been created for the opening in front, and do well to notch that, or you can go ahead to iron it or even chuck it down so that you know where you're supposed to sew on, which is what I'm doing right now. Just keep sewing along on the line till you get to the point where you want the opening to start from. So when you get to the point where you want the opening to start from, then you just double stitch at that point. For me, I'm going to be stopping just at this point, and I'm going to double stitch at that point. I've gone ahead to sew the neckline for the back, and what I'm going to be doing right now is to top stitch the neck. Now in top stitching, make sure that you're sewing on the facing, and that the part which you sewed is facing the part of the facing and not facing on the main fabric. Make sure that the part you're sewing on is on the facing, and that the stitch is also facing the part of the facing and not the other way around. I hope it is clear, guys. And if you don't have a weaving machine, you can go ahead to just fold the edge like so, but honestly I would say it's best to weave it or find a place where you can weave it for it, so that when you see your clothes you'll be happy and it looks neat to you also. Okay, I've also gone ahead to sew the belt, and I will be turning it over. After turning it over, you make sure to give it a good press. In sewing the front neckline, make sure that the allowance that you have, that's the joining you have on the front, that the seam is open, please. Then what I want to do here now is to mark my half length. Remember the half inch you are going to be using for joining on the shoulder. Place your tape after that half inch. My half length is 17, but I'm going to be making use of 15. That's 2 inches above my half length, and my waist measurement is 32. Go ahead to divide whatever your waist measurement is, divide it by 4. Now I'm going to be dividing it by 4. What I have is 8, so I'm marking 8 on one side from the center to one side, and then the other side 8, and together it's what you have is 16. Now I'm going to be placing my belt on that place where I've marked for the waist measurement. That is 16, 8 on one side from the center line, 8 on one side, 8 on the other side. That is 16. Make sure to double stitch this so that it is well placed. Now what I'm doing here now is to join the shoulder. Please watch closely so you see how I'm going to be joining it for a clean and a neat finishing. So you join the fabric together separately, then you join the facing part also on its own. You don't join everything together at once. If you make the attempt of joining everything at once, it's not really going to look good. Now the next thing I'm going to be doing is to actually fold the round sleeve. This is an alternative if you do not have a weaving machine. You just fold it into 2, just as you see me showing you here. But since I've already gone ahead to weave mine, I'm just going to fold it once like so, and then I'm just going to fold it down. Now this is the opening that has been created on the dress, on the down part of the gown, and what I'm doing right now is to stitch it down. So as you're stitching it down, it will help that opening to be in place. You can't just leave it like that. After doing that, just go ahead to close your gown on both sides, following the allowance which you actually left on the round sleeve. Remember, I made mine 7 inches. 7 inches is actually 14, and then I added 1 inch for sewing allowance. So you're just going to mark 1 inch, and then that 1 inch is just what you're going to use to sew it all the way down from all the way from the round sleeve down to the hem of the dress. Now I'm notching this part so that when I'm ironing it, it will be able to relax properly. That's why I'm actually notching it. The next thing I want to do now is to try to fold the hem of the dress. This can be a bit tricky because you want to be sure that is the same allowance that you're using all around the hem, and so that's why I use the slit as a guide, the slit in front as a guide, joined it together and pinned the other side so that I'm well guided as I am folding it, making sure that after folding that both slits in front, you're not going to have that the slit in front, you're not going to have one side being longer than the other one. Now, to ensure that the facing is in place, I'm going to be sewing hemming gum around the facing. I'm going to be sewing this hemming gum around the facing. But if what you resorted to make use of is a cutting bias to pipe the neck, this is not something you need to worry about. But if you made use of a facing to turn your neckline, then you actually want to do this. And possibly after sewing the hemming gum around the facing, you can still tack it maybe on the shoulder side, and then on the center front. That's on the joining you have on the center front, because sometimes this hemming gum may just wear off after you have washed it for some period of time. I hope this is clear, guys. And after this, we are almost done. Did I say almost? I think we are basically done, because what is just remaining for us to give the clothes a good press, then apply the cover buttons on the center line in front, and then after that we are good to go.